Disculpadme. Buenos días a todos y a todas y bienvenidos a esta octava edición.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our 8th edition. This event will take place in English, Spanish, French, and Portuguese. So there is simultaneous interpretation at your disposal at the bottom of your screens. As you know, each year we have a motto, a slogan for this event, and this year we chose the slogan culture, or rather education, a source of culture and of learning. Education, a source of culture and learning. I wanted to say that this event should have been presented by the City Councillor for Culture and Education of the City of Barcelona, Mr. Chigara. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to come. He's just had an operation, but he didn't want to miss this chance to greet you and to send a message. So we will show you this video now, and I want to take advantage of this opportunity to wish him that he gets well soon.
Internacional de la ciutat educadora, m'adreço a tots i a totes en qualitat de president delegat de la ciutat de Barcelona, que és un municipi membre de l'Associació Internacional de Ciutats Educadores.
I want to greet you all and welcome you all on this event. It's a pleasure to greet your network. We have more than 500 cities involved now. On the 30th of November, back in 1990, this association was established with the goal of assisting cities across the world in the area of education, with all of its benefits. This with a firm commitment to assisting cities in improving their societies as well, and also involving all sectors of society in these cities.
Este año celebramos el Día Internacional de la Ciudad Educadora bajo el lema Cultura, fuente de creación y aprendizajes en la ciudad educadora. La cultura es un elemento de desarrollo.
Culture is a key feature for development in our cities and leads to a greater sense of identity. It leads to a sense of empowerment. We are trying thus to mobilize all of the people involved and getting people to mobilize for the development of their cities. We want to enable new synergies among city councils and among civil society protagonists, because the rights to education and culture are crucial in cities such as ours. And this enables us to share perspectives and pool our efforts to create cities of opportunities and cities that can be more hospitable.
Doncs, muchísimas gracias, Lluís.
Thank you very much
por tus palabras. Y bueno, en una óptica de derechos
for
humanos,
those words, Luis. With an eye on human rights and full rights for all individuals, we need to look at and care for the rights to participate in education and in cultural life. So we are trying to build bridges here. Education and culture are two areas of the common wheel, the commonwealth, where we can make contributions from individual cities towards implementing education and culture. And this is generally done through different kinds of institutions and bodies.
Y para poner de manifiesto que los gobiernos locales podemos llevar a cabo acciones decididas
To assist with this and to show that local and city governments can make a contribution, we have invited Dr. Nicolás Barbieri, who will be giving us a presentation on the social and cultural and educational policies and policies of equity. And we've also invited Katowice, Montevideo, and São Paulo, those three cities, to share with us some of their initiatives in this area. So please allow me to introduce our speaker. Dr. Nicolás Barbieri is a professor from the Universitat Oberta de Catalunya. He's studied arts and humanities, and he teaches the Cultural Management Master's course at that university, the UOC. He concentrates on cultural policies and rights. He has contributed to the design, development, and evaluation of educational and cultural policies, and is part of the team for the survey on cultural rights in Barcelona. Nicolás, you have the floor. And as to the rest of you, while we're hearing these presentations, you may send questions through the chat on the Zoom to our main speaker and to the cities. Nicolás, without further ado, you have the floor. Thank you. Firstly, many thanks to Marina and to the whole team, not only for inviting me to take part and to give this presentation, where we are connecting very different kinds of realities, and beginning, as you were saying, with the notion that culture is not only something that generates learning and knowledge, but culture can also be a source of inequality, and that's important. I wanted to consider, to have a look at how we can move from inequalities towards city policies that are more egalitarian. That is, if you like, a summary of my presentation.
Ahora, comenzar con una imagen de Quino, del padre de Mafalda, seguramente.
I want to start with a drawing by Quino. You probably know Quino. He created Mafalda. It makes it very clear. When we talk of culture, we're talking about opportunities for coexistence, for social transformation, but also inequality. And I think that this image explains much better what I could say in 30 minutes. This picture is also like a summary of my presentation. And the artist Quino, the cartoonist, is helping me here also to express how with education and with culture, and especially when it comes to links between culture and education, we are facing a major problem, which is how we incorporate and how we foster equality and not, we're not talking about trying to introduce homogeneity, make everybody level, or repress anybody. That's something that Quino is saying in his cartoons as well. These are some of the key messages that I think that these are very useful as an underpinning of what I have to say. We need a degree of stringency and of academic rigor when we're looking at education in universities and elsewhere. And what I'm really considering with you today is how, with regard to Barcelona, but this is something that can be interpreted, applied, extrapolated to other cities. As I say, I'm talking about inequality and the ways in which people experience education and culture. We had a survey of on cultural rights, which I had the opportunity to work with the UOC University and the data center. And the results were quite interesting. If we're talking about the right to participate in cultural life in cities, which is a universal right, we're talking about the right to participate in cultural life, not just capital C culture. And I think this can be expressed in 4 ways. Access to culture is one thing, going to events and so on, but there are 3 other things that are often not taken into account. There's cultural practice, there's community, and there's the way in which people participate in languages, and then the discourse of the culture in their cities. That's the second aspect. And then there's thirdly, the community aspect. This is something that tends to be neglected. And the fourth aspect is governance in the area of culture, because the citizens need to be able to have an influence on the future trends in policy and cultural policy in their cities. This is an overall universal challenge. What we're trying to do is not to reproduce old hierarchies. There's a form of culture that is, quote, legitimate, unquote, that is, quote, official culture, but there are other forms of unrecognized cultural, unnamed cultural activities that are also part of our rights. These are part of cultural life. And I think that this needs underscoring in our discussions today. And I think that we need to pay attention not just to what we are doing, but to the needs, in the plural, the needs of our communities, the needs we have in our communities in the framework of, for example, a city. I want to move on now. I've got some information to share with you, and we have obtained this as stringently as possible. In a city, there are different territories, there are neighborhoods, and different neighborhoods sometimes accumulate factors of exclusion. For example, income levels, the origin of the inhabitants, or the scope for getting access to education. If we ask people, for example, about their access to the sort of official or legitimate culture, going to theater, concerts, to the cinema, going to exhibitions, what's commonly recognizable as cultural life, there's a difference between or among the different neighborhoods of cities. Barcelona, or wherever you live, there's a link between this and the educational level of the citizens. The educational level correlates with the scope that people have to go to, for example, cultural and educational activities as well. But you have, I think, to have regard for something else here. If a neighborhood is an area of exclusion, it can also be an area of opportunities, because very often cultural life takes place outside the confines of institutions. And that's why in our neighborhood, we asked for other kinds of activities that are not generally deemed to be culture. Walking around the city, taking a walk in nature, telling stories, for example, within the community, storytelling to one's children or one's friends. And see here how the percentage of people that can do that kind of activity is far higher. And the inequalities from one neighborhood to another are decreased. Here we have our 2 surveys in 2022 and 2019. You can see how there's been more cultural activities on the fringes or outside institutions in recent years. I say this because this is a form of cultural life
educativa, con los recursos
It has a
educativos.
great deal to do with true culture, although it may not be part of the formal institutions. On these slides, the lower income neighborhoods on the left and the higher on the right. And I'm talking about spaces that we might not generally recognize as high culture. I'm sure you can think of other examples, but this was a survey, a poll with open-ended questions, and we asked about what the activities were in 2019. And the replies were classical centers such as libraries, culture centers were used, but there were other, lower in the slide,
o los equipamientos educativos y equipamientos deportivos son espacios
educational centers, parks,
y evidentemente también
markets, schools were also deemed to be important. And I want to talk about other subjects that I think are very important when it comes to talking about inequalities, gender and origin. We've talked about territory level and how that ties in with the level of studies. I want to go back now to Kino's image when difference becomes inequality. In other words, when a person's origin
and in many other cities in the world, and even today, when we have the equality of gender in very different manners, may indicate a conditioning of the right to cultural life in a city. This is a question that really identifies us and it was related to the pandemic. Nevertheless, it also was related to the closing of cultural institutions. Look what happens if you ask people, have you had an impact with the closing of synagogues, etc. Look how this impact is more important for men. And it is more and more every time that we are talking about this. This is a result that why we talk about poor. That is very important.
Como ustedes podrán ver, ese impacto es mucho más importante para las personas migrantes, las personas que tienen un origen, en este caso, visto.
An origin, not only Europe, but the rest of the world. It could be Latin America, it could be Asia, in what is really the people who have had the adversity in Barcelona or Catalonia, or even in other locations. Look how we see this and how this has had an impact much more on people that have different type of origin. This takes us to reflect about what are really these factors that are creating, or better say, explaining the difference in the right of having the right to participate in cultural life. On a survey that we have been carrying for a long time, but nevertheless also has an importance in this, the survey or research that we have called DIPAR, because it gives us the right to participate in cultural life, we analyze these inequalities, and I show in my presentation some of the policies. As I told you before, if the right of participating in the culture, we can say that the zip code is a genetic code, referring to our cultural right, the expressions, and the zip code is much more important than the genetic one. Well, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but we have been saying that there are many other multiple factors that also do it. And we do not know really if this works or not. This is probably the part, what is the possibility of this? And even some of them that try to connect a cultural system and an educating system, as Marina said. Public policies that are being connected back to back. And many times these answers show us our own limitations. Well, we cannot talk only about the criticism we have for the universities. We have several types of replies. Very often they do not recognize the way of learning music, which is not the same as learning with methodology. And if you have one that is better than the other, we have to have the possibility of communicating. Very often, what happens with this? They give or place the responsibility of inequality on the people than on the institutions. The people are qualified as people with no interest in cultural life, with not educational possibilities, no possibility of taking their own decisions. And you stigmatize more the people than the institution themselves, that very often we are the ones who create this symbolic representation towards life. A very important topic for me is when the cultural policies and even the educational one, and both the educational and cultural one mix this. So we know that the cultural studies is the same culture for everybody. Well, it is not really so. We have the culture of the neighborhood. We have different type of culture, not only because it is not effective, because it is stigmatizing these people. And then it also reproduces, as you well know, that is central on the education segregation. Yes, that's what I mean. We promote education, but nevertheless, all of us are connected to that. We find this on a daily basis, even of the efforts that are done against it, as we have already said before. This is not only a question of inequality, but it is a critical look in this aspect or interpretation of culture. And in a certain way, management, and why not the finding of solutions that are correct. And let us then talk of all those who are pessimistic, like Jesus Martín Barrero used to say in Latin America, and they use it as a benchmark in communication, education, etc. Some of the policies that have to be researched, promoted, and studied in depth are those that gives us hope, not only on an optimistic viewpoint, but also those who show us this. There are political policies, cultural policies, and you will see that my presentation is closely referred to this. It is not as an antidote for a very long time, but especially lately, we have the extreme right that is advancing. No, we, as in our investigation, culture is a paradox. Yes, it can open space for liberty, freedom, transformation, but it can also be, as I explained before, for the reproduction and this. There are policies that are trying to pinpoint this. Why? Because what are they? Spaces so that we can face and negotiate differences between people that must be different. And therefore, the cultural policies are always fine. People of the same origin, the same neighborhood, the same culture, and the same type of identity. And that is where different people will be able to share, because yes, there are policies that go in the same direction, recognizing or acknowledging the differences, but obviously the effort of not stigmatizing, promoting cultural right as a collective right and responsibility. Obviously, those that have more responsibility and more rights must show it. But the system that can work in favor of this is not only of the big cultural institution. No, we must also involve community, political, and other type of participation. What does this mean? That we must ask ourselves what conditions, social, political, and economical, must change in order that every community and individual may consider this that is valuable. And this also implies the economic, social policies, health policies, and obviously that we have to work together. For the educational and cultural system, it is very difficult to coordinate with other areas that are also intervening in the city. But that is not definite, obviously. And finally, I believe we have to carry out a self-criticism exercise. Today, I'm sharing this space with people who live not only from the viewpoint of culture, but social and many others that are closely related, the self-criticism that is essential to understand that cultural rights are very closely related to the democracy, and that culture or cultural life is merely one piece of human rights and other ones. Therefore, I believe that it is essential that we have to leave our own perspective in this regard. When cultural rights advance towards democracy, and when democracy advances, also obviously the rights do. And it is essential, therefore, that we have to make an effort in a coordinated manner towards achieving this. With what we do, those of us who live, work in research and the development of policies. I just want to finish with a very brief story, because that's the last words I will share with you, that is related. Kurt Bonner book. I don't know if you know this author. In 2006 in New York, a professor of a high school education institution presented a very important challenge to the students. They had to write a letter to the main or the preference writer that they preferred. A lot of letters left, but only one received an answer, Kurt Bonner. But he was already 84 years of age, and in his own words, he was an iguana. Why? And that is why, instead of making the talk that the students wanted, Bonnerman decided to send a letter to them. In his letter, I am not going to read it, obviously, because you can read it here. And I'm going to share with you an emerging after he reading the letter. And with those words, I will finish.
November 5th, 2006. Dear Xavier High School and Miss Lockwood, and Messrs. Perrin, McFeely, Batten, Mora, and Conjusta, I thank you for your friendly letters. You sure know how to cheer up a really old geezer, 84 in his sunset years. I don't make public appearances anymore because I now resemble nothing so much as an iguana. What I had to say to you, moreover, would not take long, to wit. Practice any art, music, singing, dancing, acting, drawing, painting, sculpture, poetry, fiction, essays, reportage, no matter how well or badly, not to get money and fame, but to experience becoming, to find out what's inside you, to make your soul grow. Seriously, I mean, starting right now, do art and do it for the rest of your lives. Draw a funny or nice picture of Miss Lockwood and give it to her. Dance home after school and sing in the shower and on and on. Make a face in your mashed potatoes. Pretend you're Count Dracula. Here's an assignment for tonight, and I hope Miss Lockwood will flunk you if you don't do it. Write a 6-line poem about anything, but rhymed. No fair tennis without a net. Make it as good as you possibly can, but don't tell anybody what you're doing. Don't show it or recite it to anybody, not even your girlfriend or parents or whatever, or Miss Lockwood, okay? Tear it up into teeny-weeny pieces and discard them into widely separated trash receptacles. You will find that you have already been gloriously rewarded for your poem. You have experienced becoming, learned a lot more about what's inside you, and you have made your soul grow. God bless you all. Kurt Vonnegut.
Muy bien. Comenzaba, ¿no?
Fabulous. Yes, so we started with Kino and we finished with Bonneman, and I hope that this presentation has inspired you and may help you in a debate over the next few minutes. Thank you very much for your invitation. Thank you very much to you, Nicolás, because your presentation has allowed us to grow in our beliefs and that how culture transmit everything that culture really has so that we may grow as individuals and communities. I will keep some of your phrases and ideas because it is a collective responsibility and we have a lot to say. And that is why the educating cities thank you for your intervention, because this letter it is very clear in its words that to take good decisions, you have to have a good knowledge about the territory and about the meaning. And the example that you gave us, how a city is concerned to handle and what is the reach of its cultural offer, and how the citizenship is able to take advantage. It is also very well aligned with what we commit ourselves as cities to work with culture and towards culture, to place it at the reach of everybody else. Thank you very much for your intervention. I believe that now we will open a dialogue with our guests. This dialogue will assist us to see that what you are proposing is already happening in many of the territories. That is why we have 3 very good participants. We have Montevideo, the city of São Paulo, Katowice, and a very distant city, but nevertheless they're very close as regards the commitments undertaken for the educating cities. If you agree, because we have to choose an order, we are going to choose the alphabetical order. So we'll start with the city of Katowice. We have a very good representative of this city. We have Lucas Calibasian, and I will tell you very quickly to show you that he was always closely linked to cultures, and I am sure he has very interesting things to share. He is the director of communication of Pierre Garden of the city of Katowice, and he's also the director of this institution since 2021. He is part of the group that managed to present the candidacy of Katowice at the UNESCO in 2017 and many other related, and it is the most important representation of music in the world, as all of the creative cities of UNESCO. He started his career as a cultural journalist in important newspapers in Katowice. He obviously represented between 2006 and 2011 and had held important positions in theater, etc. And he has made very good contributions in other areas. He's cooperated with the radio. As you see, it is a polypathetic person and it's very difficult to describe him. And we will ask him to present the event of the music.
Thank you very much. Good morning or good evening for those who are watching us from the other sides of the globe. Thank you for presentation, for the invitation, and for giving this opportunity of presenting one of our projects that we are running here in Katowice, Poland. Let me just give you a short background, as Katowice is a post-industrial city, and until 1989, the economy of the city was mainly based on heavy industry, so mainly coal mining. And one of the positive aspects of that is that we are very proud of our traditions of brass orchestra, because almost every coal mine has its own brass orchestra. So we have hundreds or maybe even thousands of people that were involved in performing this kind of music personally, and which means that there are thousands or hundreds of families and more other people that had a contact with that. So brass music is a very important part of our musical heritage. And as you already heard, since 2015, City of Katowice is a member and proudly member of the UNESCO Creative Cities Network as a city of music. That's why we strongly believe that music is a very efficient tool of social change, that this is the way of improving people's life and also developing people internally and of course socially. That's why we created the project that we called Katowice Orchestral People's University, and which is funny, and you may find it interesting, especially as we have many participants from Spain, is that this project was also somehow inspired by our partners from the Catalonian city of Hospitalitat. I hope I pronounced it correctly. It was on cadre of Eurobact project. We started the project of Katowice Orchestral People's University in 2020, so we already have 3 editions behind us, and the third is now ongoing. What is it, Katowice Orchestral People's University? First of all, it consists of 3 very important blocks, but the most important take places in public schools, in primary schools of Katowice. We started from 2, and now it's being enhanced to 4 primary schools in the city. We've been choosing, first of all, those districts which could be called as sensitive districts or disadvantaged districts, because the social aspect of this project is so crucial for us. And what we did and what we are doing now is introducing to the learning scheme of those schools through in the classes from second to fifth. So we are talking about the children of the age from 7 to 11. The classes of playing two kinds of instruments. One is trumpet, and the other is cajon. And as you can imagine, it's not about learning and teaching how to play an instrument. We don't want to create any virtuosos through that, but it's the way of giving the children an opportunity to meet, to integrate, to learn how to cooperate, also to lower the tensions in the group, which is which happens quite often among teenagers or even children. It has a very important, especially nowadays, a very important aspect of integrations of children from other countries. As you know, with the start of the Ukrainian war, we and also Katowice are the place where many immigrants and refugees from Ukraine has chosen as a place to live. So there's a lot of Ukrainian children in our schools, also our primary schools. So the lessons of cajoons and the lessons of trumpets, both of them very popular and very popular among children. And now we are counting that more than 2,500 pupils has participated in this project throughout those almost already 4 years. It's this kind of this block of the project is also important for us, as in the Polish public and in general Polish educational system. The artistic education is somehow neglected. So the artistic lessons are very rare and being, we can say that they are neglected somehow. And with these lessons, we are giving the children this wonderful opportunity of having contact with the music and with performing the music. So it has a lot to do with these words of Kurt Vonnegut that Mr. Barbieri was quoting just a moment ago, that do any art, no matter if you do it good or wrong. So this is exactly what we are trying to give to our young participants and our young citizens. We are also inviting parents and their children for separate workshops with the same instruments, so cajoons and trumpets. It's being held in our institution, so in Katowice City of Gardens, and it's in the second part of the Katowice People's Orchestral University. And the third one, also last but not least, it's the workshops for adults, for people who never perform any music, that never had the instrument in their hands, and now they are also learning how to play trumpet, of course, on the amateur level. And they are this is the third part of our university. Of course, preserving this tradition I've been telling you about, the tradition of and the heritage of brass orchestras, also mining brass orchestras, give us a special opportunity to organize the concerts of the professional orchestras that are still performing in the city and in the region. And it's being, of course, organized in the schools. And also giving the opportunity to contact and to have contact with professional musicians who are somehow ambassadors of our project. So yes, maintaining the orchestra tradition, giving also this opportunity to children with disabilities, with the special workshops in the schools. Holiday workshops during the summer. We invite children on the playgrounds to try this project with us. Just a second. And yeah, the grand finale. This is what's happening at the end of every year of our university. we are meeting all our students, our young students, and also our adult students that I've mentioned before, on the stage of Katowice City of Gardens, on a huge concerts, of course, also with professional artists and professional orchestras, to give them the opportunity to perform live in front of the public, in front of their parents, in front of their families, and to present their achievements to the people. And this is how I wanted to finish my presentation, just giving you the short example of what's happening on the stage during those final concerts. This is the registration of the concert from last year with Marcin Wyrostek, one of our famous musicians from Katowice. Let me ask the technicians to show you this short 50 seconds film from our concert. So as you see, those children had those lessons only once a week for just a few months, but they were able to perform it live on the professional stage. If you'll be crossing Katowice in next 2 weeks, feel invited for another final concert on the 14th of December already. So we are 2 weeks ahead. And thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for the invitation.
Muchísimas gracias, Lucas, por hacernos partícipes de la vitalidad de la vida cultural y concretamente musical de la ciudad de Katowice. Estamos convencidos que estas oportunidades dadas a estos chicos y chicas realmente habrán mejorado su calidad de vida y habrán producido cambios sociales importantes, ¿no?
Thank you very much for this very interesting presentation showing us what opportunities there can be.
Sus avances y poder
Thank you very much. And it's good to hear about this progress and how people can be taught to live and coexist with other generations. This will be very valuable for them, and I'm sure it will have an impact on their existence as people and their development, so that each individual can make a contribution. I'm sure that they're all affected by this. So thank you very much for your contribution. And I'll now give the floor to our guest from the city of Montevideo. If earlier we heard from somebody who's been writing a lot about culture, we now have Mr. Alberto Rivera, who is an actor, a director, a teacher, a playwright, and he performs Murgas. He is from the multidisciplinary school of drama called Margarita Gergou, and that was in 1995. He carried out an artistic postgraduate qualification at the cinema school in Uruguay. He also attended further courses at the drama school in Paris, at the Theatrical Center for the Oppressed in Paris, at the Fratellini School in Paris, the Théâtre du Soleil. He's been a director of plays and theatrical productions, and was in charge of culture in the Ministry for Education and Culture between 2006 and 2008. He's now at the Multidisciplinary Drama School, EMAD 2009 to 2011, and he teaches has been since 2006 teaching professional practice and extension drama activities at IMAD. You have the floor, Alberto, to tell us about some of the projects of Montevideo, particularly in this area of culture. You have the floor. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, depending on what time zone you're in. For our city council in Montevideo and for our culture department, it's an honor to take part here. Thank you to the Secretariat. Please show my slides. We like to call this sensitive compasses, sensitive courses, because this is part of our rooted program. We call it that, our roots program. And this is set up in the Gran Museum, which is one of the iconic museums in Montevideo, one of the, if you like, long-standing old school culture museums. And it's connected with a series of workshops, around 100 people showing their creations at that museum, talking here about people who develop their workshops. Apparently the slides will not move forward. There we have it.
Y ese nombre de ese taller, de ese espacio.
The name of this workshop, sensitive root, sensitive courses,
¿De qué trata el trabajo de la Secretaría
is quite revealing about what our Secretariat in Cultural Development and Extension works in. I'm very taken with the notion of educating city, and I also like the concept of a utopian city, a city that's projected over time, that's projected into the future.
Trabajar contra esa desigualdad
We were hearing earlier about political aspects and how to combat inequality. And I agree that this is a long-term activity. And that's why from our department, we're working on this notion of the sensitive binnacle with our men and our women in the center stage, really. And we're looking to the long term so that people's inner lives can be translated, can be expressed in their out activities, can be sublimated, if you like, through artistic activities and expression. As the slide says, we are convinced that utopia can be built within ourselves and through otherness. In this year, 2023, we are having, or have had, 88 such workshops in Montevideo City, particularly in the suburbs. In the outer suburbs, we've had workshops for plastic arts, music, percussion, and a very, very wide range of activities that, as you can see on our City Council website, the esquinas, or corners, the esquinas activities, what you need to look for. But what we want to do is to make it possible for persons who don't have regular access to cultural activities can express their inner lives, their inner impulses in an outer event. I do have a problem with the slides, the speaker was about to say, but there it is. This process of cultural decentralization is something that we've been tackling in Montevideo since the 1980s, when the Frente Amplio party took over this department on culture. We started broaching the notion of cultural decentralization. So we're working in the neighborhoods, in the suburbs, in territories that have been appropriated by the inhabitants themselves.
Ese trabajo tiene su síntesis en el año 2006.
And all of this came to a head in 2006 when we set up our Esquinas de la Cultura, or translated Culture Corners program. This Culture Corners program is a whole series of decentralized workshops because we wanted to have them in the outer parts of the city. You can see this on the slide. I shall be as swift and as interesting as possible. I don't want to be boring. Here's one slide. The Cultural Decentralizing Secretariat is made of this. I've made up of these corners, Shake, which is the Shake program has to do with culture and sport. Grow is another cultural space that we set up in 2019. This is also on health, culture, and sports. The Esquinera Center, or corner, where we have 22 workshops, and there are people working there, work with cultural centers and social centers. There's the Parado Cultural Center, and the one at the bottom, the Balcón del Cerro, the Hill Range balcony, is going to be opened next year. And this secretariat is made up of various territorial offices that work in all of the neighborhoods of Montevideo, getting the inhabitants involved with the second and first levels of policy making. So there's the local councils, the mayors, the city council. This is where first contacts with the citizens are established, and the city councillors and the cultural managers, who are links really with the people in the inhabitants, and then there's the administrative staff, the communication staff, and the policy management working in the territories. This work is, as you can also, linked with the decentralized halls in Montevideo, and we have around 100 very different cultural areas, and then there's the third level of governance.
Pasamos a la próxima placa. Nuestro objetivo, ustedes lo pueden leer también en la web, es profundizar la democracia y el desarrollo de la participación y la cooperación de las entidades y los ciudadanos. Nosotros queremos empoderar, y nuestro trabajo es el empoderamiento de los vecinos y de las vecinas en el entramado cultural. Por eso, esto que poníamos al principio de las bitácoras sensibles. Entendemos al ciudadano, entendemos al ser humano como una entidad donde se vincula lo intelectual, su mundo interior, sus decisiones políticas, sus no decisiones políticas. Por eso nosotros trabajamos desde esta Secretaría a nivel transversal con muchas de las divisiones, con muchas de las secretarías de la Intendencia de Montevideo, con la discapacidad, diversidad, género, salud, deportes. Entendemos que ese trabajo transversal genera esta equidad, esta igualdad como objetivo utópico del que planteaba Nicolás, y que muchas veces se ve afectado por los vaivenes de la vida política. De hecho, esta es una secretaría dentro de la Intendencia Municipal de Montevideo, trabajando con lineamientos claramente políticos y culturales, y eso hace que muchas veces nos encontremos ante los vaivenes de la propia realidad política y de los cambios en la vida política del país y de la ciudad de Montevideo. Pasamos a la siguiente placa. Les mostraba hoy que es en raíz, que es mostrar y compartir. Ese es el Museo Blanes. Pasamos a la siguiente. La idea de una muestra donde hay muchísimas generaciones que conviven. En esta muestra hay muestras de talleres de niños y niñas, talleres de adultos mayores, hay expresiones. Como ustedes ven ahí, trabajamos mucho en este año sobre el autorretrato, sobre la percepción, esto que hablábamos de la bitácora sensible, donde trabajamos, dónde nos vemos, dónde estamos, cómo nos colectivizamos, cómo nos encontramos con la otredad, que es fundamental generar esos campos de encuentro, la diversidad, como entendemos al otro diferente y además habilitamos la posibilidad del encuentro en tiempos donde está la batalla de la diversidad y lo binario. Nosotros apelamos y apostamos a que a partir de los talleres que trabajamos en territorio aparezca esa mirada sobre sí mismo para el encuentro con la otredad. Pasamos a la siguiente, por favor. La importancia de los centros culturales. Para nosotros todos los enclaves culturales, centros, complejos, salones cooperativos o comunales, clubes barriales o espacios culturales son posibilitadores de desarrollo interior y exterior y de encuentro de cada uno de los vecinos y de las vecinas que habitan en Montevideo. Por eso, esa cantidad enorme de talleres. Durante cada semana, desde el mes de marzo hasta el mes de diciembre, se mueven entre 3.500 y 4.000 personas en los talleres que se desarrollan en esquinas. O sea, hay 4.000 personas que habitan esos talleres, que participan de esos talleres, que intercambian su mundo interior y su mirada del mundo a través de lo artístico, que aprenden técnica, que pueden desarrollarse personalmente y comunitariamente, que aportan al barrio, que muestran al barrio lo que hacen, que son llamadores de encuentros sensibles con otras personas. Por eso para nosotros es central también el trabajo de estos espacios y de mantener su particularidad. A veces un espacio cultural es solo una casa donde habita la poesía, donde se desarrolla un taller de percusión, y eso genera en el entorno del barrio, es un llamador enorme y es como una vela encendida que permite que se desarrollen otros lenguajes en territorio. Estas son una serie de fotos que cuentan, para que ustedes tengan una expresión de lo que son estos espacios culturales. Seguimos con la otra placa, por favor. El espacio público, la plaza. Nosotros festejamos en territorio. Luego de la pandemia, y voy cerrando en esta presentación, luego de la pandemia, nosotros decidimos habilitar y habilitarnos el espacio público como espacio de resistencia cultural y resistencia política. Durante la pandemia nosotros mantuvimos los talleres a nivel virtual. Decidimos mantener la misma cantidad de talleres que venimos desarrollando desde el 2018, 180 talleres se hicieron de manera virtual durante la pandemia para que la gente que estaba en territorio no perdiera ese anclaje de poder desarrollarse aún en ese territorio de encierro al cual nos llevó la pandemia. Apenas salimos de la pandemia, nosotros decidimos tomar las calles, tomar el espacio público. Empezamos a hacer lo que se llamaron las milongas esquineras. La primera milonga fue virtual.
The first milonga, the type of dance in the parks, in the basketball
y tomamos las plazas para que la gente
places as well. We took over the parks so that people could dance, so that people could hug, so that people could take advantage and enjoy its public space and meet others. We generated two spaces that are called the others a la vuelta de la esquina in 2022 and February 23, where we carried out activities with milongas, which is a special dance, and during the weekend so that people could be able to participate, circus, shows, percussion, and other type of entertainment meeting. The expenses of these public spaces has been a banner carrying out our interest because this creates equality, diversity, and the possibility of meeting and fighting others. That takes us out from our private spaces to make us join the public ones. Thank you very much for your attention.
Alberto, muchísimas gracias a ti.
Thank you very much, Alberto.
Por compartir
Thank
con
you
nosotros,
very much for sharing with us this extremely interesting project and to transmit the importance of this Well, it's obviously full of problems and difficulties, but nevertheless, culture, sports gives us margin that we can explore in other cities too. We love the idea of taking over the streets, to take culture to the people and to take them out of the comfort zone, as well as when you mentioned the inner world of the people, of what happens, and that change into a workshop, representation, dancing on the park. And the effort of the municipality in Montevideo created meeting spaces of working. Look into your own inner self and then extend it to the other. It is very inspiring, and we are deeply thankful for having accepted this invitation. Let us now give the word to Ms. Ana Rosselli de Carvalho, who will tell us the sales from the city of São Paulo and how these spaces, cultural spaces, sports spaces, educational spaces, are at the same time spaces that offer opportunities. She is the coordinator of these unified centers in São Paulo. She has different type of specialties. She has a postgraduate in higher education, art, aesthetics. He has been working in the municipality of São Paulo for 37 years as a teacher, as a coordinator, as an advisor, and now she's finishing a master's in public policies regarding education. You have the floor in order to explain these fantastic programs that we were able to visit again in October, and that left us touched of the interest of the municipality of São Paulo to get closer to the neighborhood that needed, in order to the needy ones, so that people may not only enjoy culture as a spectators, but to feel them in their own skin. Thank you very much. You have the floor. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Let us talk a little bit about us from SEO in São Paulo. Do you know what they are? We have strategic points for giving the opportunity to the communities. SEO is an instrument that offers it has been decided and designed with a special meaning. As you well know, SEO, you know what it is? SEO is an unified educational centers where we offer activities all the time, both to the communities in its own place as well as the surrounding neighborhoods. SEO is not a big school. There is much, much more than that, because in SEO we offer UNEF and different type of activities and MEF. And SEO offers many type of activities. Uniseo is the university that SEO offers to all the community, that courses that have been recognized by the ministry and the Ministry of Education of Brazil, with all the different type of courses at remote or distant education. Furthermore, SEO has also had different type of culture. Why? Because culture is extremely important, because it is closely linked to values. Thinking in this way, it is through culture that we can understand different type of groups and what they represent. It is essential as an innovation of culture. Furthermore, of the knowledge that is transmitted through generation. And that is why we always offer different type of artistic shows, a full single type, an idea that may assist us to form and train the individual. We offer the people and the professionals, or the professional artists, but above all else, we urge these help and assist the artists of the same realm. It is a close relationship with the community. Can see movies that are extremely important, and we know of upgrading the knowledge of everybody. We have libraries, many libraries that offer, in addition to other type of research, storytelling, both for children, school children, as well as adult. The libraries are open to all public and is fostering the reading and different type of other activities or cultural activities. Well, let us talk a little bit about sports. And so we have swimming pools for the communities, both through the entertainment as well as classes that are given by acknowledged experts in the field. The swimming teachers that will develop in the communities the first contact with hydrogen. Why? Water gym. Why? Because it is necessary to people with 99 years or more. Well, quite frankly, that person, if they really want to assist at that time, for that is why we have the sports teams for every single type of sports offered freely, free of charge to the community. The community can use them also during the weekend and to participate freely with their family members. We have different type of competitions and every single type of gym, fighting, etc. lessons where the community is participating fully and ask what type of activities they want, because SEO will always consider what they want and try to offer it so to strengthen the relationship between SEO and the community. The people can use the facilities and all the requirements will be used. Why? Because all of us have the rights. Furthermore, we have entertainment areas that are important and the family can use them freely. And it is not only useful, but it is very pretty, very nice, and harmoniously built. SEO also gives a skating rink offering community lessons for both adults and children, and for athletes too. In CEL, we have the Centro de Estudio de Línguas, offering lessons in different types of languages, which is an enormous opportunity to acquire more knowledge. We also have Fab Lab, a set of different type of centers that have a very wide-ranging possibility of tools and machines, because this is an innovation that we are offering to all this that is necessary. But we cannot forget that we have the experimental kitchens that have been properly set up for all people to really obtain some knowledge that they can use to work. We offer special courses and setting up the communities as well as in the distinctions in the city of São Paulo. We also have the Telecentro. A Telecentro is a space with a basic knowledge of how to work with the virtual world, how to set up your computers, use internet. So it is an important place. Why? Because the people are not going against development, or to the contrary, they are learning because SEO exists to give people what they need. And we have Biblioteca, which is a special space for children. The children starts right from the start when they are born, to see what rights they have, to know that they have duties, but they also have the right to choose their own path.
Temos atividades culturais, shows de artista por notoriedade, teatros, aulas de música.
There are various other kinds of activity that we have, different kinds of workshops and spaces for students and for citizens.
Os CELs são gratuitos.
These centers, these SEO, are free. They are open to all. They're places for people to work and to have fun. Next slide. They're open every day to receive those who wish to come. Every day of the week from 7 till 10 a.m. till 10 p.m. Weekends from 8 till 8. Public holidays, 8 till 8. Interpreters regret that the quality of this connection is so poor, it's difficult to understand. To hear clearly the speaker, they will always do their professional best. The intention of the sales is to meet the needs of all of our communities. Next slide. You can see here the 58 such schools, CEUSs, sales spread across the city of São Paulo, and how they are distributed within each neighborhood. We, in the federal education structure, wish to combat exclusion. These are ways of finding out more and of getting in touch with us. Every week, the Municipal Secretariat on Education issues a bulletin on what's been happening and what will be happening, what is the activities that are scheduled in the other CEUs sales in the next week. The sale, which in Brazilian Portuguese is a pun with sky or heaven, sale, sky, heaven. So these sales centers, heaven, are ours. This is the message on the slide. This is the message from the Secretariat of Education in our city. We are very grateful to you for this opportunity to share with you the way we are working for the greater good of the community. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias a ti, Roseli. Ha sido un
Thank
placer
you,
escucharte y realmente después de
Roseli.
oír todas estas oportunidades de crecimiento individual y
It's
colectivo.
been very interesting to be able to listen to the scope you offer for individual and collective growth in your sales. Brilliant name, because of the way CEU means this kind of school, but also means the sky and heaven in Portuguese. So I think that this search for inclusiveness is quite palpable at the work you're doing in all of these 58 centers that you have across the municipality. And I'd like to thank the speakers who have been very disciplined about sticking to the time limits we set them. So that means we have a certain amount of leeway now. We have the possibility of having discussions, question and answer sessions, so that participants can get their questions addressed if they want to know more information. Firstly, Nicolás, we'd like to suggest that you may wish to ask a question of each of the other speakers. And after that, we will share those questions that we have received from participants on the chat in the course of this event. This is a chance for us to go on learning a bit more from our speakers. Nicolás, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
De hecho, esto pasa como con los buenos
Well, that's difficult. It's a bit like when you're a good student. You do a job, a good job, and then you get asked to do more. It's a matter of personal challenge, really. These experiences we've heard today have been very enriching, and I'm very glad to have taken part. You asked me to ask a question. I've got lots, but I'll just concentrate on one. Here's a general question. If anybody wishes to address it, great. And then I have a specific question for each of the other speakers. But there's a general question about which I'm curious. This has to do with the pending challenges, the things that, to some extent, are not yet working as optimally as we would wish. Because it's fine to talk about the things that are working, but it's also interesting to address those issues that are pending solving. So what are the aspects in your initiatives that you feel offer scope for improvement still? Or which don't offer the inclusiveness that we would wish, or where the vulnerability of some of the communities we're working for prevents them from benefiting.
Muy importante. Y, en definitiva, también quién decide las cosas importantes.
And there's also the question of who makes the decisions on the important issues where you work. Is it the public institution, or is decision-making shared and negotiated and made more democratic? So that's a general question. If anybody wishes to rise to it, thank you. Then for Lucas, I do have a specific question.
¿Hasta qué punto el proyecto supone una cooperación real?
To what extent is your project something that constitutes true cooperation among people who are essentially different? I mean, you have people who are professionals in the music world in your project, I think. You have students who are learning, who offer different levels of capacity, of potential. There are families who for the first time are being invited into such kind of activity. And I'm sure that there are mediators in the process too. So have you really succeeded in bringing about cooperation among these very, very different stakeholders? Or is that something where you're pending a solution?
So let me answer to your question as I was asked as a first. Yeah, you're absolutely right. One of the challenges we are facing is really creating this environment that is a place of meet of young students, of young children, of their parents, and professional musicians. for many families to which we introduced the music, let's call it like this. It was something absolutely new, something that they needed to chew, let's say. They needed to understand what's going on and why their children or their boy or girl has came back home from school with a trumpet or with a cajon. We are not giving cajoons to their homes, but the trumpets we do. So it was a challenge at first glance, and I think that it was the emotional aspect and this way of how children were enthusiastic about it that helped us to convince parents that this is something that they should really support. And when they see their children on the final level of the project on the stage in our concert hall, they understand what really happened and why the participation in this project was so important for their children. And the other challenge we are facing it, I need to admit, is that we really wish to enhance this project to all public schools in the city, but still the organizational and financial questions are at stake and are some kind of an obstacle of it, as it is a very demanding project, not only financially but also in terms of organizing it logistically, for example. So we are enhancing it step by step from 2 to 4 and hoping to develop it further in the next years. But this is not something we can that we can start in all the primary schools from the very beginning. So this project is more a process than a closed and finalized, let's say, product or a process.
Muchas gracias, Lucas. Muchas gracias también por traer dos temas importantes al debate. La financiación, es decir, ¿no? La política está donde están los presupuestos también, por lo tanto...
Thank you for bringing these important issues.
Vamos a utilizar el dinero, pero también es importante hablar
Our budgets are important.
este tipo de políticas.
It's important to see what kind of resources are destined to one kind of activity and what to another, and how those decisions are made.
Para desarrollar de forma
This is an important responsibility for our institutions when it comes to coordinating activities and not just setting up activities, projects that may be innovative, but then they decline and are not so useful. So thank you for raising those points, which should be part of any educational policy that's seeking to bring about transformation. Now, for Alberto,
si te interesa, preguntarte por la capacidad real.
I'd like to ask you this. Decentralization, to what extent is it actually possible? Your esquinas, your corners, are places like on the edge, on the margin of the city. So to what extent have you been able to create a new form of centrality, not just transferring resources to the neighborhoods? To what extent has your project been able to bring about disruption and effects that the institution really hadn't planned?
Se transforman en dos preguntas largas para contestar. Trataré de...
Well, there are two long questions there.
Agradezco además.
I'll do my best to reply. Thank you, Nicolás, for the two questions.
Porque me parece que es importante desarrollar ambas partes, porque además...
I think we need to develop both aspects of this.
Así irme a los 5 minutos que tenemos para responder.
But I shall try to confine myself to the 5 minutes I'm given to reply, and otherwise will turn me off.
Que coyunturalmente a mí yo trabajo en la dirección, en este caso política.
The way I work in the policy department
a mi pasado,
ties in very much with my training. I'm an actor and a theater director, so I tend to usually do
falta mucho porque implica
observe more what's missing than what's there. And there's a lot that's missing
culturales, sociales,
if we are to succeed in putting across these cultural and social policies in the way that we want to work. And if we are to succeed in shifting power from the center to the periphery, to the other centers where we want to work. And this means a lot of work for a lot of different segments of society. And it also means public sector money. If you're to generate public sector policy, you need public money. And without that, it's just going to be wishful thinking.
Hablaba desde la década del 80.
And for many years, 1980s, end of the 80s, when our decentralization work began,
divididas las fuerzas políticas, había
in Uruguay back then, there were different political parties, the Colorado and the National and the Frente Amplio. Different parties were in power in different institutions, including the City Council of Montevideo, which meant that we had differing and conflicting views of culture and other aspects in the city. And since 2006, when the Frente Amplio took power in the country, came to power in the country, it turned out that that party, Frente Amplio, had the first, the second, and the third levels of government in the city of Montevideo, which meant that there was more public funds made available, and there was much more transverse approach, a cross-cutting approach that was adopted, and this made it possible for a certain degree of acceleration to take place in this policy. And there was a very powerful degree of decentralization. And this was a result of the expectations that had been created because Montevideo wanted to become a utopian city. And this meant that many of those involved in the public sector were able to learn better what to do. And we were also effectively launching a call for participation by other institutions, clubs and associations where people were tired. There was a great degree of tiredness among the people who had been working in this sector. In 2019, your speaker corrects, the party was not elected in 2016. In 2019, there was a change in the party in charge in Montevideo. And this led to a major cutback, 20% cutback in the budget for this sector. And if to that we add a year and a half of pandemic and lockdown right across the world, in such a way that many sectors of society in Uruguay disappeared practically from the map. And this made it much more difficult to keep things going in decision-making. But I shouldn't talk about just what's missing. Areas like Sacude and Crece, Shake and Grow, which are co-managed by the City Council in Montevideo and the inhabitants, and these were set up by the inhabitants to build these spaces, and there's a degree of institutionality where this is co-managed between the local associations, the city council, and the neighborhood councils, as a result of which very often decision-making is done on a joint basis between the institutions and society. And this is something which we wish to accentuate in the future. Because we think that this is crucial if we are to progress towards thinking about the utopia of a city where somebody will go out into the street and seek otherness for growth. Also, this month and next month, December, we're concluding our plans for the workshops and activities we'll have next year, 2024. We're going to retain the same number of workshops.
de trabajo de...
I don't want to show you the flow chart and the slides we have on the work we have in our office. We're working with 100 cultural associations, and we're making decisions in conjunction with the neighbors, men and women who manage these cultural centers, and we need their input. So with them, we discuss what possibilities are available to us, because there's only a finite amount of finance, and we try, as I've said, to have cross-cutting activities. So what I'm saying is that we have a long way to go, but we have also done a great deal of work with our neighborhoods. Thank you very much. I hope I didn't overrun my 5 minutes.
Nos has ayudado a entender mucho mejor una realidad compleja y te agradezco también por
It is a very complex reality, quite frankly, and you also give us some information on the education and how we advance. Taking a little bit about your intervention, as well as the demand that you mentioned, that we have a temporal look, I would like to ask Rosalie, in the specific case of SEO, if they have, in a consolidated manner and for more than 20 years, an educational policy in a coherent way, and that is presented like this, that create an impact, and that go detecting the policies that have the SEOs, and that what impact do they have on these communities, on these people that are more fragile or more vulnerable, but that nevertheless have the values and knowledge to close. What has happened in your contact in these 20 years or more than 20 years, and what type of conclusions do you have about your impact? In 5 minutes, quite frankly, that is very difficult to do, but it will be very interesting for all of us to know.
Não é fácil, mas eu posso te dizer que o céu, já com esta concepção,
if we think about this, it is very important to know that the community has to recognize itself as participant of this space. What happens with the community of SEO? It is a change in behavior, a behavioral change. They have to become more critical. Why? Because they have to have this type impact for expressing themselves, and it is this expression that is going to have an effect. And it is important because in SEO, it is what we call of being participative, and it is when we have different types of participation, all covering even the municipality, and that is where we can take our decisions. What happens in the community? Yes, in the core of the community, many people that have acquire importance for work, for culture, for development, and many take advantage of these spaces and go to other locations and where they develop themselves. Because our space consists also of working in the community, the function of human rights, because it is important, because we are interested in human rights, and people really look for guidance regarding the rights and the placement of each one of us. We in SEO can guide them to the proper authorities or the proper institutions. We have a curricula of the city, and it is specifically this city's curricula that takes the continuation of all educational measures. SEO are available for each one of the teaching and somewhere where people can obtain guidance and learnings. We have a value, a very specific value that increases every year. Just to give you a mere idea, we have 3,000 people that come daily. Can you imagine? And they believe in the territory, and the people come and change from one cell to the other. It doesn't matter. We were absorbed by the community because of our programs and what we offer. The schooling, children remain in SEO, and that is where we cover the needs of the children. We give them a meal and cover all the other activities that may require on the educational viewpoint. And furthermore, we also see the participation of the communities in everything when we ask them to question what they want in their territories. The challenge is enormous because many of the communities still need to understand that SEO belongs to them. It's not something outside of the world. No, it belongs to them. And in each and every single moment, we have more and more students that understand about culture, art, sports, becoming people that really exercise democratic rights and their rights. And above all else, it is the conception of a word that is important: respect. Respect to all our diversities and their individual characteristics. Thank you very much, Roseli. It was very clear, both the intention as the way that you are doing of what is happening with your action. I don't know, Marina, if we have more time for works or if we share it with the public or how we can go on.
Yo creo que vamos
Yes,
a dar paso
I
a
believe
preguntas del
that we
público.
can open it
Ahora las
to
veremos aparecer
the
en pantalla.
questions that come from the
Y-
public.
Y seguidamente.
We'll see
Mira,
them
ya tenemos aquí
on
una.
the
Esta,
screen.
esta es para
We
ti.
have one here. This is
¿En
for
qué
you.
medida
In what
una evaluación
measure
participada,
a
investigación, acción,
participating
con los diferentes agentes y
assessment and
comunidades
investigation with the
clave
different
en la
agents and
construcción de
community
políticas culturales y
represents a
educativas
key
transformadoras
in the
y
construction
esperanzadoras?
of cultural, political, as well as educational
Bueno,
ones that are going
realmente
to
es un tema que me
transform
apasiona y
and give
también,
hope.
como,
Quite
como decía Alberto,
frankly,
intentaré
I
ser
am
breve,
passionate about this
porque creo que
subject.
es fundamental
I
entender
believe it is
que la
essential to
evaluación es un
know
derecho
that
también.
the
Hubo alguna de las
evaluation
preguntas y
and
va por aquí.
assessment is
La
a right.
evaluación es un derecho en el
It
sentido
is a
de
right
conocer los
as
resultados de una
regards
política
knowing
pública,
the
pero también
results
un
of a
derecho
public
de la
policy,
ciudadanía y de las
but
comunidades para
also
poder
of
participar
citizenship and
en
communities to
entender
be
qué
able
está
to
pasando con esas
participate and
instituciones
understand what is going on
en el día a día. Por lo tanto, yo sí que
on a
tengo
daily
mucha
basis.
confianza
So
y creo
yes,
que la
we
evaluación puede ser un
trust and
instrumento
I
para
believe
justamente
that this can
coordinarnos
be an
mejor entre
instrument
personas,
so that we may
organismos,
coordinate better
comunidades que vienen de
between
mundos y de
people,
saberes diferentes,
communities,
pero también
institutions
es
that
un
come from different worlds and
reto
different
y puede
knowledge.
ser incluso
But it is a challenge.
conflictiva, porque una
And
evaluación
it can
debe
even
tener un
represent a
objetivo
conflict. Why?
equitativo,
Because it
no
has
un
to
objetivo,
have
si se
an
quiere, de perseguir
equitable right. It is not a question just of wanting
comunidad
to
o una
achieve
política
a
para ver qué es lo que ha
community
hecho
or a
mal, sino
policy
que
to
lo que
see what
debemos
they have
entender es que
done
la
wrong.
evaluación es una
No.
cultura, es una manera
Assessment
de
is
entender
part
nuestra
of
intervención
culture.
para
It is
poder
a way
aprender
of
y mejorar
understanding
nuestra intervención.
ourselves to
Entonces, siempre
understand
desde la
and
confianza
improve.
y la equidad, es decir,
The
el
trust
trabajo
and equity
igualitario, podemos avanzar
and
en la educación.
egalitarian work will allow us
Entender la
to
evaluación como
advance in
proceso
the
de mejora de
assessment
nuestras
of
políticas. Pero
education
hay que
as a
ser
process of
responsables,
improvement and
honestos
enhancement.
intelectualmente y
But we have
políticamente
to be
para
honest,
generar este
both
espacio
politically to
de
create
evaluación y
a
de aprendizaje
space
compartido.
that will give us this possibility of
Gracias,
learning.
Nicolás. No sé si hay alguna pregunta más
Thank you very much. I don't know if there's another question from the public.
Entiendo que es para todos.
I
¿Qué
believe
obstáculos
that
han enfrentado
what is
en
the
sus
obstacle
respectivos
that you
municipios a
have
la hora de garantizar el
faced
acceso a la
in
práctica
your
cultural de toda la
municipalities
ciudadanía,
when you
en
wanted to
especial a
guarantee
la
the
población en
access of
situación de
cultural
vulnerabilidad?
practice to all
Un poquito se
citizenship,
contestó
especially to the
en la
population
primera ronda,
in vulnerable
pero
situations? Let
como
us
hemos
see the
recibido la
first
pregunta, la
round.
formulamos.
But we mentioned the question exactly as we received it. Anybody interested in answering it?
¿Qué dificultades han encontrado ustedes
What difficulties have you found when you wanted to present cultural responsibilities addressed to people or population that are vulnerable?
Profundizo un poco lo dicho.
Well, I can go a little bit further in depth with what I've said in the previous intervention. Our problem really lies in the fact that the people that are more vulnerable from the social and cultural viewpoint are the ones that organize themselves less than the others. And besides, they believe that this practice doesn't belong to me, it belongs to other segment of the population. I believe that this is something that, as Nicolás said at the beginning, about what is education and culture on a long-term basis, because you can see the policies that go to the perception that whatever we have, cultural would imply a systematic task of a cross system of culture, education, let's say, of everything that is social and duly acknowledged, to say that this might become or start to be understood. I believe that what Nicolás said is very systematic to what he says. Gumbel is the one that says that this gives value to this text and allows it to be heard. Why? Because it was shown as something emerging. And that was where the paradox lied. He spoke of the Amakeles as an emerging person. If that letter would have been read by somebody else, we wouldn't have listened to it. But when said by Gumbel, has a more important meaning and a completely other viewpoint. So I believe that all of us who work in culture have to do, those who have a microphone, a screen, we have a social and political responsibility to be seen and create a transformation. Thank you very much. Any of the guests wants to add anything else?
Último, muy breve.
Okay, very brief, just a few minutes.
So just one thing, because what we are struggling, especially here in Poland, is this lack of understanding that I see that you understand it perfectly, that culture is not only the things that we used to perceive as culture and this legitimate culture or high culture that was presented by Nicolás, that you also include those activities which are very closely related, like sport ones or even kitchen or cuisine, as we've seen in Rosalie's project. It's not very, let's say, popular on the way of thinking here in Poland. You can even see this in the structure, for example, of the municipalities, when you have a Department of Culture, which is completely separated from the Department of Education. So when you are doing the projects like ours, when you are combining education and culture and introducing cultural activities into schools, it's not very easy, and you really need to work it out with connecting those two departments and different stakeholders, so they can understand that those two worlds are really very closely related. So I very admire those things that you achieved already in your cities and in your countries, and yes, we are following it. But we are only following it, and this is still a way to go ahead of us.
Muchas gracias por esta apreciación. No sé si Rosalie quiere decir en 1 minuto, 2 minutos, unas últimas palabras.
1 or 2 minutes, I don't know, just at the end, just a few
Quero dizer
minutes more.
que a lei da cultura, como foi dito, a gente tem que ter
Of culture, as it was said, allows us to see this in a visible way. Why? Because it is not used really to take into account all these things. And that is a concession we have to give the opportunities to present it from the moment that they go participating. Gradually, they change and into something that is linked to the rest. Why? Because we talk about SEO, we talk about an integrated, and we talk about the human being in its essence and in all its dimensions. And one of them is science and art with a participating citizen. And this is obtained in different manners that have been presented. There are different type of public spaces because so that she is perceived as something that is offering to the population as well as the citizens that belong to that space.
Pues muchísimas gracias a todos.
Thank you very much to all our guests. Thank you also for the conference and for this dialogue that was extremely interesting. I hope that it has presented an inspiration for all the participants and that tomorrow you will carry out many cultural activities in your cities, because that is the purpose we have. I would like to thank our guests that not only have told us about what they do, but they're also being generous enough to tell us about the difficulties they face. It's been very clear about the closeness to citizenship and how important this. And in some of the intervention, it was also clear that our initiatives are also better, and that if we co-build them with citizenship and citizens, well, there's nothing else for me to tell you, but that these experiences help us to reinforce our democracy, to grow as people, as well as communities. I wish you a very good celebrations of the International Day tomorrow, and keep us informed of what you are doing, because we are absolutely convinced that we can continue learning from each other and that this helps us to advance. Thank you to all our guests, and we hope to see you very soon. We keep in touch.